Chapter 1. The Courtyard Whisper. Salem, Oregon. Capitol Mall Courtyard. Monday, 7:12 a.m. The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the bricks still glistened like wet glass beneath the pale overcast. Salem always wore this kind of damp like an old sweater. Never fully soaked, never fully dry, just heavy. The Capitol dome loomed behind a veil of low clouds, its golden pioneer faintly blurred like some forgotten idol. The maple trees lining the courtyard had begun their autumn work, bleeding yellow and rust onto the walking paths where early commuters tiptoed between puddles. To most, it was just another Oregon morning. But not to Saul. 5th floor, Miller's Corner building, old law offices, mostly abandoned now. The smell of mildew and aging plaster lingered even through the cracked window pane he'd propped open. The angle was perfect. 298 yards, line of sight across Court Street, dead center on the second bench from the south fountain. His target was there. As predictable as sunrise, Stephen. The man sat as casually as if reading the classifieds, a thin folder in his lap, an old styrofoam cup steaming faintly beside him. A crust of bread dangled from one hand as he occasionally fed the doves that had gathered around his boots. There were 7 of them. Fat, gray Oregon doves. Mourning doves, mostly. Heads bobbing, pink feet shuffling against the wet bricks like tiny old men in slippers. Saul exhaled and let the world contract to the tunnel of his optic. Trigger discipline was muscle memory. Breath control second nature. The suppressor was tuned. The wind, dead still. No flags stirred. No breeze whispered across the plaza. Even the pigeons seemed reluctant to flap this morning. He reached the final wall of trigger pressure, that thin, glassy moment where nothing existed but breath and certainty. And then it came. Not yet, he is mine. It wasn't a sound, not in his ear, not in the room. It was in him, like a thought someone else had placed there. There was no threat to it, no urgency, just ownership. For the smallest sliver of time, his body hesitated, not his finger, but his spine, like ice water running down between his shoulder blades, a cold that didn't belong to him. Then discipline overruled everything. The pause was less than a heartbeat. He fired. The suppressed shot cracked like a dry branch. Instantly the courtyard erupted, but not from the shot, not from panic, not from the man, from the birds. The doves exploded skyward as though yanked by invisible strings. Wings flashed, feathers tore, bodies twisted. And then, just as suddenly, they collapsed. One after another they fell, not flapping, not evading, falling. The first struck the bricks with a wet slap. The second crumpled midair, its neck folding unnaturally. The third spiraled like a maple seed before hitting the courtyard bench. The others landed in a broken trail, each corpse closer to where Stephen still sat. Stephen never flinched. He simply turned a page. Alive, untouched. Saul's finger hovered over the trigger, mind snapping through every possibility. Wind shear? Scope deviation? Obstruction? No. His calculations were perfect. The round had flown true, but 7 doves now marked the impossible trajectory his bullet had carved, as though nature itself had realigned the world to shield the target. He disengaged from the optic, breathed, packed his gear with the mechanical precision of long habit. The backup van sat 2 blocks north. His exit was clean. And yet, as he stepped into the stairwell, something gnawed at him. Not fear, not even failure. Something colder. Wrong. Minutes later, Saul crossed Court Street as just another office worker under an umbrella. He approached the courtyard slowly, as if pulled there. The bodies were easy to spot now. 7 small gray birds splayed across the plaza like offerings. He crouched by one. The feathers were still warm, soft, undisturbed, except for the hole. A tiny, perfect hole near the breast. Lifting it slightly, he caught the glint inside. The bullet, lodged deep, no exit wound. His bullet. Saul let the bird slip from his hand and rose. He scanned the trail. 7 corpses forming a ragged line toward the bench. Toward Stephen. The target never knew. Or maybe didn't need to know. The mist thickened around him again as he slipped back into the city's bloodstream. But the voice, that whisper, stayed behind his ear like breath on skin. He is mine.